Welcome to Strength Chat Podcast, presented by Kabuki Strength. Introducing your hosts, Chris Duffin, the mad scientist of strength, Rudy Cadlove, mature athlete and coach, and the wizard of training himself, Brandon
Yeah,
Sack.
you're live.
We're live. Why is my thing not show live on my thing?
It takes a second.
I can't log in.
Sync. There it goes. Now it's up.
Scroll,
Here's it.
refresh the page by scrolling.
Mad scientist.
Oh, it's live.
Sorry, quite a few people on too.
Turn the volume down.
Turn your volume off, though. Volume off. Okay. All right.
Come on.
Got it
It's
off?
upside down.
As long as you can read the questions.
People are joining. There we go.
Okay. All right.
We got a
So-
quick.
So let's talk vehicles this week.
Who's
Yeah.
that?
Well,
Who
I'm
are
just
you, by the way?
Brandon.
Don't you ever do that.
Brandon has caught the modification bug.
Well, easy. I only installed storage panels. And
I know,
so I can
but
hang a
you're
fishing pole.
how much time have you spent now researching potential upgrades for your?
I don't want to say because it might make Rudy mad at the disproportionate amount of time I've spent working.
On something unproductive?
Just kidding.
So Brandon last year bought a new Toyota 4Runner,
Yeah.
and thinking about doing some upgrades, a little lifts and tires. Of course, I highly encourage such activity, but my methodology you don't quite agree with, it seems.
No.
No.
So what is your approach to modification?
Well, I would start with the Sawzall.
Yeah,
I
naturally.
mean,
Standard.
I mean,
Oh, I thought it was going to be pharmaceutical modification.
careful now.
So we're starting off this way.
Hey, this is a clean show.
Oh, yeah. So, Chris, in case people don't know, will just as soon chop something off and kind of make it work. I don't know. I don't know. That's the mad scientist.
I'm just, no, there's methodology to it. You want as lowest center of gravity as possible with the largest tire size. So everybody lifts their vehicles high, blah, blah, blah. You need to get the Sawzall in there and remove all the excess crap that's in the way. I know it's brand new, whatever, who cares?
I care.
Just let me at it with the Sawzall. Just let me at it with Sawzall. Or I could show you and you could do it yourself.
People are asking who our guest is this week.
Make something up
Ladies and
quick.
gentlemen, you are our guest this week.
I think they were referring to me being at the edge of the table.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
This
Yeah,
is
narcissistic.
Coach Brady Cable, and those of you that have, although someone else has been in the customer service role the last couple months, but anybody that's ordered product or dealt with through our customer service, either phone calls, emails, Brady heads up, and he still manages our distribution crew, in addition to his coaching responsibilities as he shifts.
He says, yeah, who's that?
Yeah.
At the table.
Watch some of our videos have been on there a little bit.
Oh yeah, Brady's in a lot of our educational content videos, so you can find them on our YouTube channel, on the KMS website. We do have a really great guest lineup over the next month, but today we are shooting one just open-ended with you asking questions, and we will pick some questions and provide some answers, hopefully.
We got a few coming in here. I don't know if we want to jump into it.
We could still wait a few. Yeah.
Had a few training questions already.
We do.
Yeah,
Oh.
coming in.
So, so what's been going on lately, gentlemen? You guys were down in Orlando. Tell us about that meet. Brady and Brandon and Darrington and Stevie.
Yep. So for Brandon and Stevie and I, that was our first USAPL Raw Nationals. Derek had been there a plethora of times. He was a vet. It was fun. It was a really cool, really well-run meet. For being that packed, having that many lifters over that many days, it was all organized, ran smooth. Yeah. You were just down at IPL Worlds. How was that, Rudy?
Well,
Dr.
I'm
Rudolph, I heard.
just doing what I'm supposed to do, set world records, right?
Yeah.
With all your lifts, right?
Do you guys want to
All four.
gossip on who we think failed the drug test?
You
I don't
mean
know.
Orlando?
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be a few that pop up. Yeah.
It's been a lot of that lately. Gotta watch that, guys.
Yeah.
Well, it is a pretty easy thing, like there are lots of meets that don't do testing
Oh,
most
yeah.
people could go to. So
Yeah, that's true.
just saying, you know.
It's always the trend in the pre-workout. It seems to be getting a lot of people these
The
days.
trend in the pre-workout.
That's been a common excuse lately.
It's a common, people that use that
Yeah.
excuse. Oh,
I didn't just
Trend?
Yeah, I didn't just make that up. That's been said a few times.
wow.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that what was in this needle. I thought it was heroin. I didn't know it was testosterone.
Right.
Favorite accessories for training upper back tightness? Upper back tightness.
Are we going into questions?
I'm going to go into a question
Okay.
before we spend too much time on
Scroll
pre-workout.
to the top of these questions.
I think that's a good one. Well, first we can talk about what is upper back tightness. So, well, actually, yeah. Are we looking to alleviate it or build upper back strength? I think these are good topics here. So, obviously, we want to have tightness in our upper back and actually stabilize the shoulder joint during lifting. But at the same time, we see a lot of people that walk around with too much tightness and don't have the athletic ability to relax. And if we're not able to do that, long term we end up with poor movement of the scapula, poor movement of the glenohumeral joint, and these can lead to all sorts of issues. Lots of shoulder issues, could lead to disc issues, could go all the way down the stream depending on the effects of that. One of my favorite movements for both strengthening the upper back and also providing good scapular movement is what we call the DUR, or the Duffin upright row. So we should have public videos on that, but basically you hang I'm getting a head nod from our media guy. That is a public video, so you can look up DUR or Duffin upright row maybe on the YouTube channel. No,
I'm not your media guy.
you know. Oh God,
It's an IT guy.
they don't know who's sitting over there.
He's gonna quit. He's walking out.
My
This is gonna be a short podcast.
my creative director is giving me the head nod. My creative director, is giving the head nod and a thumbs up and a big smiley face now. So, but essentially you hang a kettlebell into a strap, and with the arms fully extended, you will be have the kettlebell just hovering off the floor, and you will have, since we're doing this live here, your hands in this position here, and you'll pull up at the elbows like you're going to do
Regular upright row.
regular upright row, except you've actually freed the hand position. So unlike a barbell upright row, we won't have a lot of the impingement issues. So it removes the impingement issues, because I'm not a fan of the barbell upright row because it causes that with a lot of people. And then from there we actually go into rotation. So you continue pulling as you rotate. And then last bit is a scapular retraction where you pull the scapula together at the top of this movement. And it's kind of a variation actually of a face pull in the final position in the last part of the lift. So we're actually combining a face pull with an upright row. But what I really like about it is once you get into the scapular retraction phase, the weight is sitting on your chest and will actually deload a little bit to allow a little less strength, because that scapular retraction at the top is hard. This is one of the reasons I don't do a lot of traditional face pulls, because when you watch people do them, they actually won't get all the way into that full position and then also miss the scapular retraction, because usually if you're using a weight stack, or bands are even worse, and that's the most common way to do a face pull, is the weight gets harder where it needs to get easier. So you see a lot of incomplete, and it's actually doing the opposite of what we want to do, because we're actually not using and moving the shoulder blade correctly, and we're just stopping short and kind of locking that structure down. You guys got anything to add on that?
Yeah. The guy asked about upper back tightness. I think he followed up and said strength is what he was referring
Okay, well
to.
this does both.
Yeah,
That's why I chose that, because I wasn't sure exactly where the question was going. So this is a great one. Usually we do these pretty high reps. You're only going to be above 12 reps. Because some of the major muscle groups are going to fatigue out, and then the smaller muscle groups will start kicking in. So we're usually around that rep 16, you'll start feeling a big burn in your upper back. So usually like 4 sets of 16 to 20 is good with this movement. And you can do this 2 or 3 times a week. Great movement. Usually I do this, I save it towards the end, because you'll be pretty burnt out after doing this movement. So you could do it lightly as a warm-up or a workout prep to mobilize the shoulders as well. So use a very small weight. But I encourage people, the first time they do this, don't go overboard on weight, because it's going to feel light and it gets...
I think you successfully destroyed how to do a proper upright row.
Okay, all right.
You also
well
want,
done.
You want to make
Thanks.
sure that you got the proper length in the strap too, so you don't smash your gonads.
Also,
Yes.
excellent your headphones.
Exactly. You got to be careful not to crack yourself between the legs or in the face.
Do you want to follow that up with upper back strength and tightness specifically for the squat? What are your
Yeah.
opinions on that?
Yeah. Well, actually, why don't you move forward with that?
I think a lot of what Chris covered is, I mean, that's all of that is kind of one thing, right? Upper back tightness. Specifically in the squat, it's likely not so much about strength as it is your actual ability to control your position. So proper spinal segmentation, being very tall through your spine, and allowing that scapula to actually do its job in retraction is probably the best way.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to add too, is a lot of people talk about upper back strength just because they're getting folded over in their squats or their deadlifts, and sometimes it's not actually the strength of your upper back that's limiting you, it's the position that you're putting yourself in or the way you're creating tension. Like a lot of people create tension in their deadlift by just retracting, and they're not using their lats at all, so they're not stable through their upper back and they fold over. So making sure that you're using your lats to help stabilize that.
Yeah, definitely not just that. Yeah, you want to use the lat for the and cause a little bit of scapular depression to lock that in and get that tight in, because the lat is going to draw that down towards the core and actually provide that power transfer between that core and the shoulder. And then if you've got that locked in, then as you're taking power through the hips and through the floor, you'll be able to transfer that appropriately. So a really good question here about at what point does volume become detrimental to motor pattern on the squat for beginning lifter or advanced lifter? So I've got an article that's going to be coming out here in a couple weeks and actually talk about volume and its, how at what points it can become detrimental. Because when we start seeing those breakdowns, this is the most common cause for injury. We always want to think, people always jump to movement patterns first. But I believe the research published by Tim Gabbett out of Australia shows that most of the time it's actually because we've increased our volume too fast. And so this happens really, really often. And I believe the numbers are somewhere around 10 to 15% bump in volume from week to week are going to potentially get you in that area where you're on the verge of an injury. And so this is one of the reasons, like when you back down or take time off, you don't want to just jump right back into the loads that you were before, because 3, 4, 5 weeks down the road, you're going to have this accumulation of fatigue that you're not going to be able to recover from. You're going to have a breakdown, and like I said, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to injure yourself, but this is what the resource, and this is more susceptible, not just powerlifting, not just squatting, but basically across all athletic events. So it's something really important to understand, that we want to manage volume appropriately, and you need to build into it. You can't just go and take, hey, I've got this small odd program or whatever it is, and just like start following it if you haven't built up to that. People that follow my training, when I'm deadlifting 2 or 3 times a week heavy, I didn't just start there. I built over 6 or 9 months into the capacity to be able to handle that. So that's the number. We want to manage it and keep it to less than 10 to 15% increase from 1 week to the next, regardless of whether you're a beginner or an advanced lifter.
Yeah, and the way that movement patterns can kind of play into that is if you're moving poorly, then the threshold at which that volume is going to become detrimental and open up your risk for injury is going to be lower if you're moving less well. You're able to handle a little bit more of that if you're moving better, but there's kind of an interplay between those two things. Whenever somebody tells me they got hurt some way, my first question is usually, what was your training like? What kind of volume were you doing? If you just went from benching 1 time a week to benching 4 times a week, well, it makes sense to hurt your shoulder.
This one gets back into the upper back, but talk about the shoulder rock, please. So there's actually some stuff that I don't have published on like the sales page or really in any articles or anything that I've really only covered in discussion about like some of the theory behind what makes this such an effective tool. This comes down to basically the length of the product and the balance of the tool as well. So we talked about upper back tightness when we talked about like that tightness all the way around all the time being detrimental. And you need to be able to relax. And the balance of how fast you can relax is also related to how fast you can contract. And it's significantly related to athleticism. And so when I speak to this, I often talk about float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Like that's exactly it. It's that balance of being able to be soft and then hard right when you need to, and the ability to relax. So a lot of times when we're training or doing
that problem a lot.
Yes, I know you're. Anyway, I knew that was going to be taken the wrong way. As
I was waiting for
before I was saying it, but you know, this is one of the things that actually makes that tool so effective. So with that length, you and the right weight, there is no way that you can perform the movement without learning to relax. And some of the toughest people I have to teach this are highly muscle people who have been training for a long time that don't have that ability. And sometimes it increases. Everybody wants to start with the weight with the tool with no weight. Like, oh, I gotta learn it. Well, sometimes you can't do that. You need more weight. Like when I was working with Ryan Kennelly on it, you know, if you've got enough muscle to control the weight through the movement, you're not actually able to do it. And so you have to learn that. And then it becomes a very fast boom, boom, contract, relax. Except we're doing it in a fashion where all the muscles supporting the shoulder girdle to make it work properly are all working in the right sequence together, turning on and turning off. And that's where the magic, that's where the developmental kinesiology comes in resetting that shoulder function, making it such a powerful tool. So I probably should do some sort of write-up or something on that at some point in time, but it's one of the things that makes it such a powerful tool. If you just look like at a kettlebell halo, for example, where you've got no lever on there, you can put as much weight on there as you can, but you never have a contract relaxation phase.
Relax, yeah.
This is the difference. This is why it's not stretching. This is why it's not. This is like what makes it such a cornerstone movement for shoulder health, and it works that all the way through the chain. So not a sales pitch at all. Just kind of understanding the.
It does take time to get used to it, to learn to relax to the drop. Everybody wants to control that shoulder rock through the entire swing, but letting it drop and relax prior to the contraction.
So
is really
could it fix poor posture and shoulder impingement? One, you know, I can't, you know, say, hey, it's going to do this for you, but I can tell you that nearly anyone that has a shoulder impingement that has used the shoulder rock has seen an improvement. We see what happens because if you have the wrong, if we have this tightness around the shoulder, it's basically closing the space in the joint in the shoulder. And as we see that, we see impingements where somebody is completely limited, bone on bone, they're hitting a spur or whatever it is. And then after 3 weeks of using the shoulder rock, that just disappears. And why does it disappear? Well, it's still there, but we've actually got more space in the joint, in the right areas because it's moved and shifted, and that glenohumeral joint has got the space that it needs to operate properly. And so we see so many issues with the shoulder, from labral issues, impingements. God, I'm trying to think of all the we have so many people that you get this. You get the customer service stuff coming in, like the thank yous of like from all these different types of tight or sloppy shoulders, or you know. But basically, what is a stronger, healthier shoulder not going to, you know, what kind of issue is it not going to help? Like it's going to help a huge plethora of issues. But that's the magic of why it works in that fashion and why it works on such a diverse set of shoulder issues.
I think it's important to know too, the guy said, will it fix poor posture? That's more of a habit thing too. It's not like if you're sitting like this all day, the shoulder rock's not going to magically make you think to not sit like that. No. So you need to have some awareness and kind of work with that in your day-to-day life too.
Now we do in the coaching video that comes with the shoulder rock, it does walk through that stuff and it helps you basically actively do that during the movement and teaches you how to do that. And that should be able to transfer over, but as a whole, like that's just your choice in your day-to-day activity. On posture though, let's branch here. Yeah. So sometimes people get posture confused, and they're trying to have this perfect posture all day long, and there is no such thing, and it's actually bad. Yes, it's bad to hold perfect posture.
Yeah.
You need variability in movement, variability in position. It's a range. This is why when you're standing, you shift from one foot to the other and so on. That is what you should be doing, okay? You're gonna be in a little bit of extension, you're gonna be a little bit of flexion, you're gonna be in a little side bend. Like, move through these ranges all the time. But yet, no, you don't wanna be sitting here slumped in bad posture all the time. But you don't wanna be, like, this is why if you try to hold the perfect posture here, you're gonna fatigue out and not be comfortable holding it. You need variability.
Yeah,
sound like you got
Dr.
something.
McGill was very specific on our last podcast we had with him about that, about the importance of variability of posture. Yep.
Yeah, it's not like it's sitting in a chair is not necessarily bad. It's the fact that people do that for 10 hours or 12 hours that's bad. It's these static positions for long periods of time and not moving. But if you're sitting in one position, even if it's good posture, you're still not moving. If you get a standing desk and you stand in the exact same spot, you're still standing there and not moving. And each of these different things just has its own presentations of issues that will come up because of it.
Yeah. What is the best assistance exercise for squats? Well, actually, Brandon is working on this beautiful piece called the 5 best assistance exercises for squats.
Really?
I
don't think so.
I know. It's kind of a joke, inside joke.
That's an old joke,
by
the way.
I know, but
Although maybe I will.
I had to bring it up.
Squat.
But
I'm going to do that and list the buffalo bar squat as the number one best assistance exercise.
So it's kind of an internal joke there, because we don't believe that there is a single best for anything. It depends. It depends on what your movement quality is, what your developmental needs are, where you're at in your life, and like where you're at in your training cycle. So a lot of people don't understand that. Brandon, jump in here and talk about periodization of movement selection.
That's a really, really big topic.
It is.
So I'll step away from periodization for a second and then kind of come back to it. So in terms of when we select the best assistance exercises, we need to consider context above everything. Outside of context, the best assistance move is likely the movement that allows you to perform the most work in the least amount of time possible. So for barbell sport athletes, the time it takes to perform any of these lifts is relatively the same, so we don't have to consider that too much, but the movement that you can handle the most load with, that is the most similar to your competition style, is likely going to be the best assistance exercise for you. Now, if you're struggling at certain positions in the squat, maybe we can open up the discussion of specific exercises, but from a really high level, obviously Duffin bar squats because the reduced stress on the shoulders, transformer bar squats, any safety bar squat because again it allows you to perform more work. So those from a very high level and without context are likely the best. In terms of periodizing movement, we have to also consider the qualification of the person we have in front of us. And their actual long-term goals. So there's likely no reason to periodize training unless you're working with a competitive athlete who has very high aspirations. And if you do, then we need to open up the discussion of different times of the year in terms of their importance to the annual training plan. So if you're closer to competition, specificity is likely ramped up, loading's likely ramped up. If you're farther away from competition, you can do all the necessary developmental exercises that you can. I really like Anatoly Bondarchuk's classification system for exercises, and I've kind of adapted that for us in powerlifting. And the classification would be from the very top, and we'll use a squat as an example. Specific prep exercise would be a low bar back squat with competition style gear, a specific developmental exercise. So again, with that top qualification, it's likely high bar squat, low bar squat, squat with a belt, squat without a belt, squat with sleeves, squats without a sleeves. That's how specific we're talking. The next tier down is likely specific developmental exercises, which are very, very close variations of the movement, but within the same range of motion and still using all of the same muscles. So that's likely going to be some specialty bar squats, front squats, and things of that nature. And then below that are going to be general developmental exercises, which are going to be belt squats, leg presses, lunges, split squats, maybe RDLs, things where the bar is in the same position but you're doing different movements, hopefully still influencing the same actual muscles though. So that's kind of a very high level view at periodization. Now there's obviously huge textbooks built on this, so this isn't the end all be all, but it's a kind of a point to continue the conversation when we actually talk about context.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Question on RNT training, or reactive neuromuscular training, and its application. So we do this. So for those that aren't familiar, reactive neuromuscular is like if your knee is caving, you may add a band actually working, forcing it to cave even more. But what that's going to do, and it's usually a very light level of resistance, is cue the muscles that need to move that if it's caving, you're falling into internal rotation. We want to cue that at muscles that are going to cue at external rotation and pull that knee back into position. So RNT training is really great for cueing those motor patterns or issues where we're not using everything appropriately. We do this a lot of times with the deadlift, with the lats and cueing lat engagement. But we pretty much only use this during the warm-up phase. So the question was related to how would you do this with the big three? So we would not be doing this in any manner during any of the heavy pieces of the big three. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty much just in the warm-up, and then once we've cued that, we want to be continuing with that post. Yeah, you don't want to be using RNT training anytime that you're moving into heavier weights. I don't think you guys got anything to add.
Yeah, so it's not that we have to go to that for every time we teach the lifts either. It's that if somebody's not getting something and they're having trouble perceiving something, we can use that as a tool to increase proprioception and just get them to move.
Yeah, you want to fix it first before you get to your working weight.
Well, interventions, so we consider cueing, movement prep, reactive neural training like that, all forms of intervention, and they kind of run on a spectrum from least intervention to most intervention, and we'll likely always want to start with the least amount of intervention. So if we can cue someone to do the movement correctly, we'll likely be much better off with that minimal intervention than going down the line. And eventually an intervention on the very far end is going to be doing a completely new movement to hopefully teach a different quality in that movement, and you can see how inefficient that would be, but I think RNT work is definitely pretty far down on the intervention list for sure.
Hip pain in the bottom of the squat. So I'm going to kind of jump a few different directions. I see you nodding your head there, Brady. One, we've got an entire guided tutorial on basically assessing and fixing squat issues on kabuki.ms. That's www.kabuki.ms, and so highly recommend that. But I'm going to talk about theory and approach to this. There's not one single answer to be causing it, but we always start essentially with the core first and then move to the feet next. And if we deal with those issues, you're going to deal with nearly everything between, from hips, knees, ankles, so on, are going to be remedied through this approach. Now, there's a whole lot of detail and content. That's why I said I really recommend checking out our movement web portal that's going to walk you through this. There's no way we can cover this level of content on the podcast. But essentially, if you're missing either a stable surface, which is going to be your foot connection to the floor, or we don't have good core stabilization, there's I believe it is the iliacus and the iliopsoas tighten up immediately, and it's going to pull that femur forward in that hip socket and basically change those joint dynamics. So that can have a lot of things, and obviously one of those could be resulting in hip pain. So we want to deal with correcting those two issues. It's going to be one or the other, more than likely, unless you have some sort of other, piece going on where we've caused an issue with the labrum or something in the hip, which is usually, again, as a result of one of those two issues, either core stabilization or your connection to the floor. And we've got extremely detailed videos on how to approach this. Brady, I saw you nodding your head a bunch, so do you have anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, you covered it, but just to go into it a little bit more, core is almost always the reason that I see for that, and usually it's that somebody goes to initiate their squat, and you talked about psoas tightening up, they'll just immediately kick into an anterior pelvic tilt and lose that connection between their rib cage and their pelvis. and that, like you said, that translates to the head of the femur, and you end up running your femur into your pelvis a lot sooner. So in order to get to depth, you're having to compensate a little bit, and that's a lot of the time what I see causing hip pain, especially that like deep groin pain.
I see, Davey Strongman has been asking the same question several times, or a few different variations of it, so let's dive into that. Best way to switch from conventional to a sumo deadlift, and also you do accessory movements stay the same. I believe almost everybody at this table does both sumo and conventional, right? Or has at some point in their career?
At some point, yes.
At some point, yes. It's been a while for you, Brandon?
It's been a while.
How long?
Well, I attempt to pull conventional every off season, then I just don't because it's awful.
I just started again after a long hiatus. It's also awful.
Yeah, I almost never conventional. I started with
I know
sumo
you-
and
Well,
I
so there you go.
So-
None of us do.
Just stop doing it. That's all.
Here's some advice:
But-
just don't do it.
In that vein, the short
Well,
answer.
it
But if
does
you're a
it.
strong man, you probably
Well, strongman, you got to
gotta do it.
You
So
got to do it.
he's-
But he's actually asking how to switch from conventional
yeah,
to
so
a
it
sumo.
sounds like he's going from being
From
a strong
conventional
man
to
powerlifter.
sumo.
From a strong man to a
So
cheater.
it's cheating. So
Sumo's
Dave, it's
cheating.
sumo is just
It's so nice.
No, it's cheating. It doesn't count. It's not a it is not a real deadlift. I'm just saying. So you guys will know.
Well, you've been told that many times, I suppose.
The short answer is to start sumo deadlifting. Work on your technique. That's going to be the biggest hang up, is it's a different movement pattern, and if you've spent time building up proficiency at conventional deadlifting and not sumo deadlifting, you need to just start getting better at sumo deadlifting. It's not like there's a magical exercise you can do that's just going to make your sumo better.
You know, one
There
thing.
are some
one-
hip flexibility is important, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
If you
so-
don't have that, you need to improve.
So yeah, I see that people want to jump to it and they may not have the hips mobile enough. Well, spend some time working and opening that up, because you're not going to be able to get into position off the floor just to begin with. You're going to be fighting that the whole time. You're going to be in poor position, and there's just not going to be a fix, except for bringing your stance in to accommodate what your hip mobility is at that time.
Continue to bring it in until you're back to conventional. If it doesn't work.
The other option there too is, while you're working on hip mobility, is to bring the bar up, to 3 or 4 inches off the floor, so that isn't the restriction. So go, hey, here's my desired stance. This is where it's going to be. Now you're working on the hip firing, which is a little bit different in the sumo than the conventional, but working on those mechanics while separating your mobility work. So you can bring that up and hopefully then step back to moving to the floor, maybe 60, 90 days later. So
Yeah, from blocks is really good, and doing very controlled eccentric movements in a sumo position is very, very powerful as well. So that would be deadlifting normally, holding it at the top, and then taking 5 to 8 count going down and really working on holding your hips open, and then pause it from an inch off the ground. And you might use 2 plates, 3 plates, a plate to do this. But from a movement prep standpoint, I think the best drills for you to do are things that bias hip abduction, things such as the shin box get up like we just filmed. We have a video that'll be posting public next week, either Tuesday or Thursday, on the tactical frog, which is probably the best.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The tactical frog is like my go-to for anytime my hips are tightening up and I'm wanting to sumo, or to work with other people on.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the best. And then I think the other really good one is a hip airplane.
Yeah. I had another.
So the more you can open your hips up and get closer to the bar, the better leverage you have.
Yeah, and when you're switching from conventional to sumo, one of the other things is you're in a different hip position, different torso angle. All this stuff is a little bit different, and trying to find that optimal is hard sometimes. So Brandon talked about doing a slow eccentric. So if you get that bar down to where it's just barely like touching the ground, but the weight hasn't been released into the ground yet, right there. So deadlift, stand up at the top, and then go down slow, but don't rest the weight on the floor. And just feel that position that your hips are in, the angle, everything that's going on. That's the position that you want to own on your setup. And it's going to feel the hips are going to feel a little bit higher than you think that they should be able to. That's what you want to own, that position on the startup. That's what you need to work towards, because you can do it right there. I mean, it's demonstrated. The weights are touching the floor, and the bar is in your hand, so you're basically there. So it is possible, and really, really just owning that position on this setup. And that's a great way to teach that, is through that eccentric based piece of it again. So always with people that are struggling with that or are inconsistent on their setup or can't remember their setup, is to use that as a teaching tool.
Yeah, nothing's going to quite change your mobility like actually loading that position. So using blocks is an awesome strategy to start doing that. A lot of people also switch from conventional to sumo and start to think wider is better. So they immediately just max out their stance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Start a little more conservative, especially if you're having hip mobility issues, and
that'll
then
give
work
you
out.
adductor issues for sure.
Yeah, wider is one of those things. More is not better. Okay, so the tactical frog is also going to be able to teach you really well about what your capacity is and where you're going to be at with that sumo pull as well.
Yeah.
I always say on the setup, it's not, you don't want your hips low. You determine that setup, as Chris just mentioned. But in setting up, I try to coach, and I use the term getting your pecker to the bar. So the closer you can get your hips to the bar,
But as high, but as high as possible.
But
as high
Rudy,
as possible.
not everyone has peckers.
or whatever other. But getting your anatomically okay, so it's a pecker. Okay, I'll go.
So Alex,
I can't find another term.
So Alex Label says you guys are weird. He must be referring to the rest of you, not me, and definitely Rudy right now. So just saying.
There was one I wanted to answer. Oh, yeah. So if you have clients shifting weight onto the balls of their feet when squatting, you could, if they're not, well, for one, try to switch to getting them to squat barefoot. That can bring up a lot of awareness really fast. If you're finding that they just have a mobility issue, you can stick a couple plates under their ankles to simulate a lifted shoe and work around that temporarily, but really just getting them to feel balancing their weight over the middle of their foot and having appropriate cueing strategies.
Yep. And we want to make sure that, that the heel's not picking up, the toes aren't picking up. We want to be reaching with those toes. Imagine it's in a hand and grabbing the floor, but the balance is going to be through the mid-foot as we reach and control it. Again, tremendous level of very technical videos that are going to walk you through this on kabuki.ms, of course.
Yeah, all of our rooting stuff that we film, we have plenty of public stuff about that too, but getting them to actually use their feet and be active through their base of support is going to be really helpful for that.
And that's going to, I think, kind of cover Davey's question about his wife's squats falling forward. Again, I would start there as well.
A lot of people, like, again, going back to the initiating with an anterior pelvic tilt, when that happens, people tend to have to lean a lot further forward to actually get low in the bottom because they can't get their pelvis any lower because it's already translated so far forward.
So let's dive a little bit further on that, Brady, in case people missed that. But a lot of people want to, if they're starting with that anterior pelvic tilt, they're going to be in extension. So your chest is up, your pelvis is tilted forward. And one, that's not going to give you really good core stabilization. You will not be able to maximize core stabilization in that starting position as well. So that's going to lead back to our question earlier about hip pain. So we really want to get that pelvis pulled under us and that pelvic floor working directly, being in direct opposition to the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is going to be that area between the rib cage and the spine up higher. So we want to get those two areas. So a lot of times people want to arch really hard on these movements, and we don't want to do that. We want to have this stacked core, this stacked torso position, and from there inflate all the way around the obliques, the abdominal, and through the back, the low back, the paraspinals. From there before initiating the lift. So if you're starting with that can also cause some of that issues. That may be the issue. Again, don't know in this case without observing that movement. So
yeah, we actually just filmed a good hip hinge video that I think is going to be a public one also. Might not have decided. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, check out Kabuki MS. We have some good hip hinge videos that talk about initiating that by actually moving at your hip joints and not like your L5, S1 or something similar, moving at your spine.
We have a question. If powerlifters need to work on their lower back strengthening and pull solely sumo, would conventional deadlifts help? Well, I don't know that lower back strength has ever been a limiting factor for anyone who actually moves well. I think people tend to rely on their back strength more when they aren't moving properly, so then it gives them the perception that their back is the limiting factor, when in fact their back is plenty strong. So I would encourage you to, for one, conventional is probably going to build your sumo pretty dang well if you can handle enough volume to do it. I think the main reason a lot of us haven't done conventional a ton is because a lot of us can't handle a ton of volume doing it. We can do a lot of volume in other things that are similar. So your lower back is likely, yes, conventional deadlift is going to strengthen it, but your lower back is likely not enough of a limiting factor for you to actually dedicate training resources to it. Let all of your normal squat, you're still stimulating back strength in all squatting and deadlifting exercises, so allow that to continue to happen and reinforce proper movement patterns so your back isn't the limiting factor anymore.
Yeah, I would go back to like what is missing in your movement quality that is making you feel that you've got to develop that low back strength.
Yeah.
Because it should not be lifting the bar.
Yes.
You should be holding position during the lift, not using the erectors or QL or anything like that to actually move during the movement. So.
Yeah, and then that would go back to checking your bracing and your your position and your abdominal activation, just to make sure you're doing that well,
Yeah,
like
that
Chris was saying.
core stacked, yeah.
Because your low back shouldn't be moving things; it should be stabilizing.
Yeah, lots of deadlift questions here too. Quick one, does deadlifting too much negatively affect your squat? Yes, but squatting too much negatively affects your deadlift, so choose your poison.
It is a balance, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why, like this last year, I haven't been doing a lot of squatting myself because I've been so focused, actually, on my conventional deadlift. But that, if I, with the weights and frequencies that I'm moving, if I mix squats in there, I would have to back down on what I'm doing there. Just there's only so many resources available. And it's a matter of finding the balance for what your goals are.
Yeah.
And just what you can handle too. Some people are built better to handle more squat volume. Some people are built better to handle more deadlift volume.
How much protein do you eat a day, Chris?
I'm not currently counting my macros. I really only look at that when I'm in dieting. But rough numbers, about 250 to 300 grams of protein a day is
That's
where
mostly
where-
your cricket protein. Is that true?
As of late.
Not mostly, but
All of it.
I did have some cricket protein this morning, actually. I've been mixing in a couple scoops a day of cricket protein with my regular protein. About I try
1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or so.
I think it varies on needs. Like if I'm not, some of my off days I might be training. I may be at 150 grams. If I feel that I'm fully recovered and I don't need the calories. When I'm dieting, typically, if I'm in a caloric deficit, usually it starts around like 3,200 or 3,000 calories. And when I've gotten really lean, like dropping down to like 5% body fat, I've been down around like 2,000 calories a day in the final phases of that. When I'm bulking, my calories, usually come up around 5,000, 5,500 a day. And I have to go over that before I start actually really gaining or putting on mass. So.
C-Murph says, what was the purpose of programming so many no-handed front squats during the 1,000-pound deadlift? That was because Chris wanted to no-hand front squat a lot of weight.
That was one of my goals.
Was the no-hand front squat something stupid?
Yeah, I wanted the no-hand front squat.
Definitely wasn't anything.
Had nothing to do with the...
But we actually did that. I cut those out. So that was actually earlier in the deadlift cycle. So we were using that as a squat variation that was going to carry over and develop what I needed to accomplish for the later phases. But there was absolutely, once we reached about 4 months out, 5 months out, somewhere in that range, you'll see that those disappeared from the program entirely. So,
Well, part of the reason
my goal was to front hand squat, I think 650, and then I did that, and my goal went to 700, of course. But I never did get that, so, yeah.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business.
To circle back on that one.
part of the no hands thing too was just the inability to do a regular front rack too.
Oh yeah. Well, so and so the reason for the no hands, I have restrictions in my elbows, so I cannot get in a position to touch the bar, and so I also wanted to. I was doing it also as a demonstration of how well the Duffalo bar that that same curve that fits your back actually fits the front, how position you can maintain if you're not chasing that bar forward as it's trying to roll away. So it was a really good tool to demonstrate that, and it also worked around what my limitations were as well. So that was kind of twofold, and it's kind of just a cool movement that not a lot of people do. So I wanted to have do something really like a lot of weight and go, oh, that's cool, awesome,
That's cool,
yeah.
We got another one on falling forward in the squat, which we've already
addressed that.
That's
so
Dave's wife, I think.
Oh, is it?
Someone else asked about how much caffeine do you guys consume a day?
Only one of these.
Only one?
Sometimes. Depends on what I get going that day.
Okay.
Pre-training is close to 400 milligrams for me. Off days, usually I'll mix in about maybe between 150 to 300 milligrams. Sorry, grams. That'd be a lot of caffeine. Okay, let's clarify. 400 milligrams before training, and off days. So on training days, all caffeine resources are
Good.
are pre-training only, so there's no other caffeine through the day to maximize its effect for that. I try to drop it down. I used to go no caffeine at all on non-training days, but I may have between 150 up to like 300 if I've got a really active day, just kind of spaced out through the day. If I'm shooting videos, writing, working on my rig, any stuff like that, I'm usually gonna be drinking some caffeine as well now these days. So.
How about you, Brady?
I like what Chris said, between 200 to 400, depending on the intensity of the workout. And I've been trying to move my resources more towards drinking caffeine before workouts. But I used to be training at 4 p.m., so that was kind of tough to do.
Hey, you guys are very responsible.
Yeah, how about you, Brandon?
Oh, I'll tell you what.
Whatever it takes, right?
Whatever it takes is the correct answer to caffeine consumption.
You progressed as of yesterday, didn't you?
I'll give you guys a pro tip here. If you go to Starbucks and not all Starbucks do this, but the good ones do. You can go there and order a 30-ounce cold brew. Most of the Starbucks places are going to cut that with water. You order it without water and light ice, and you will almost double your caffeine content in that 30-ounce cold brew.
No, this is for the ones that have it on tap. The ones that have it in the pre-made pitchers, that's already cut. Can't do
I
it
think
there.
ours is in the pitcher.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
they add
okay.
water after.
I'm totally wrong then.
Yeah, see, so they make it in a pitcher, and then they add a water to it. And then, training, whatever it takes. 600 milligrams, 7, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
So my favorite,
Whatever it takes to lift the weights.
My favorite non-training day caffeine resource right now is USP Labs Amino Lift. Like the stuff, the taste is absolutely amazing. It's got some BCAAs, some electrolytes, a few other things in there, but just absolutely fabulous product. I got to make fun of some people. How about that? So that lazy powerlifter. What's the best thing to strengthen my hook grip? Well, Mr. Lazy, go back about 3 posts on my Instagram story, or not a story, but Instagram profile, or whatever it is. You will find a series of videos specifically around the topic. So I think it was posted 2 days ago. So great level of detail on the hook grip, actually shot by Mr. Brady and Brandon here. So let's see, that's...
And if you're true to your name and too lazy to do that, the short answer is pull hook grip more.
Yep. Chin-ups versus rows, which are better? Well, depends on whether you
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So the same guy's been asking a lot of which is better, A or B, and for all of those questions, it's totally context
It
dependent.
depends.
If you're
oftentimes,
if you're doing no vertical rows and you do 4 horizontal rows a week, chin-ups will probably be better than it depends on so many different things. You can't just give a black and white A or B answer.
I do both, and sometimes I do neither. Sometimes I only do one. It depends on the training program, the goals, and plans to bring back the walker. I missed it when it first came out.
Well,
the walker. I am actually using the walker right now.
Came out of retirement.
That's another story. I'll be posting up video. I'll be posting up some updates on my training and whatnot, and some other things. Coming up this next
We
week.
haven't done any spoof videos for a while.
No, but I was actually we've been talking about it. So on this is we did a spoof comedy video series like a couple years ago, and there's actually a comedy playlist on my YouTube channel. So we've got this one called The Walker, which I love. It's a great video. Anyway, as a whole, we are ramping up our content across the board. So you're going to see a lot more articles, videos. Kabuki MS, we're releasing videos almost daily at this point.
Close to daily,
Yeah. So as a whole, that's coming up. Comedy stuff, I'm not sure where that's going to mix in. We keep talking about it, but haven't quite got to focusing. We're trying to focus more on actual educational products at this point in time. So. So not sure if that's going to make it back there, but I absolutely love doing those videos, so would like to get back to it.
I'm sure it'll get mixed in there periodically.
All right, let's see.
We've been at it for almost an hour at this
Have we?
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good point. You guys got any last or final thoughts that we want to throw out there?
Like Chris said, we've been ramping up content production a ton, so make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube on Kabuki MS. Check out a lot of the new stuff we're doing.
Yeah, check out. You guys are putting a lot of stuff on the KSL. We've got KSL coaching Instagram page as well for the Instagram followers, and obviously our Kabuki Strength main page. So a lot of stuff. Not everything carries over. Everything carries over. The YouTube is where all our in-depth content goes. But again, that's not probably maybe a tenth of the videos are public, if that.
A tenth of all of our in-depth content goes there.
Yes.
The rest to Kabuki.ms.
The rest goes to Kabuki.ms.
Which you can sign up for first month free using 1 month free as your code.
All one word?
All one word.
All one
Just
word.
write that up.
No.
Nope, it is.
Okay, 1 month free.
1 month free.
Is that numerical one or ONE?
ONE.
ONE,
All spelled out.
month free.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
that's good to know.
so we've got a team of coaches that are providing content on there, and we've really been ramping that up. Again, we'll post a lot of stuff across publicly as well. And I am getting back into writing. It's been at least a year or so since I've spent any time sitting there writing. So, yeah.
And Brandon, your coaching staff has room on their dance cards to add some more
Got
clients
rooms
now?
for some hot dates.
Got room for more clients.
Hey man, that's unprofessional.
Yeah, I guess that's true. What?
So you have a variety of coaching opportunities now. Yeah.
Are the new coaching products all up on the current
not listed yet. They will with the new website.
So we do have more coaching options and some cheaper coaching options than what's visible on
Less
Kabuki.
expensive.
Less expensive. Sorry.
Not cheap.
Coaching options than what is visible. But if you go fill out if you're interested in coaching from the Kabuki Strength team, go to our Kabuki Strength website and click on coaching. And fill out the intake form, and we will get back with you.
Yeah, it's been
All
good.
right.
We'll have to do this again soon.
Yep. All right. Thanks for everybody for tuning in.